There, I've had quite a few requests to make this video, so if you weren't aware, Hugo Martin, who is one of the bosses of Evri, went in front of the Business and Trade Committee and got absolutely torn to shreds. This was about a month ago, mainly torn to shreds by the chair of the committee, a guy called Liam Byrne, who is a Labour MP. I shall share the video from his YouTube page so you can go back and watch it. But a few people have asked me to make a video as to whether, as a courier that worked for them for around about 8 or 9 months last year, I thought that the accusations were fair and fair representation of what I witnessed and what I experienced when I worked with them last year. So if you've not watched any of my videos before, I did work for Evri, as I said, for about 8 or 9 months last year. For the first 3 or 4 months, I worked for them directly using the lifestyle contract, which is like a flexible contract where you can do some days. I haven't worked for them on the SE Plus contract, which is what a lot of the couriers work for them on, I believe. But after I decided it wasn't really worth my while working on a lifestyle contract, one of their contractors got in touch with me and offered me some work working directly for them, which I did because it was in the area that I live in, so it was very convenient, and the pay was much better working for the contractor as well. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to watch the video. I've got it on my other phone, and I won't burden you with watching me watching that, but as I go through, I will react to the 10 major complaints that have been put to Evri, because Hugo Martin's response basically was, what? Us? Nothing doing here? We're perfect. Anyway, let's get to it. So the first thing raised was wage discrepancies and inaccurate payments. So while I worked there, I noticed that a lot of my parcels were misbanded, and that's one of the major complaints that has been raised to the Business and Trade Committee here. So quite often I would be given, say, a parcel which was a postable, no chance of posting it because it would be like a box that size by that size. And this basically, as the bands went up, like, it was always over the banding, pretty much. I'd say on about 80-90% of the parcels that I delivered for them. Also, another big thing that they've got there is HelloFresh. So the HelloFresh boxes, they said they absolutely have to go out on that day, but they are all paid at the standard rate. And when you look at the weight on the boxes, which is a big part of how they ban their parcels, the weight says 0. So they're not weighing those at all, which means that every single HelloFresh box that they send out, which is deemed to be a priority, is misbanded. Quite often as well, I found that if, like on a Monday, they seem to have a lot of HelloFresh, and I could fill up my whole car with just HelloFresh by itself. But if I went and just delivered the HelloFresh, I might get 12 boxes in this car, maybe 15, but they're all paid at about, I think it was about 70 or 80 pence a parcel. So you can imagine, not really worth it when you've got to drive to the depot, pick them up, then drive over to where you're dropping off, drop them off, and then come back for the rest of your parcels, which for one obviously is not worth it money wise, but also time wise. Another thing that Hugo Martin did say is that couriers can go back to the depots are left open. This is another thing that is incorrect, at least at my depot. We were allowed to pick up between 10:30 and 12 o'clock noon, and you had to be packed up and gone by 12:30. So if I was to go and pick up those HelloFresh boxes at 10:30, I then have to have them delivered and back to the unit by 12 o'clock. Otherwise, who knows what they do. So yeah, that's my reaction to wage discrepancies. Oh, and other big thing as well with wages is that they don't tell you what your round rate is going to be until you get your invoice. So you could be working on a round for 6 weeks and you'd have no idea what you're going to get paid. So no way that you could plan, you can work out how much you're going to get paid whatsoever. I believe that now they've made it a little bit easier to understand. I think they've started showing half of the money, but I'm not 100% sure about that. But when I was working for them, it was completely like, you'll find out when you get paid, which is not exactly helpful when you're trying to make decisions in life, is it? So yeah, not great. It goes on to talk about unachievable targets and wage reductions. So with wage reductions, what that's referring to is that the way that they do their rounds, it seems that if, say, I go faster than the courier that was doing it before me, the system will notice that and actually drop the round rate. So it's not encouraging me in any way to actually go any faster, because the faster I go, the less they start paying per parcel. Unachievable targets relates to the fact that they are saying that they pay between £15 and £17 per hour, but actually to achieve that, you'd have to go fast. Well, I was going faster than the app was saying was the fastest that you were allowed to go, and I think I was averaging about £13 or £14 an hour. So that's not possible whatsoever, because the other thing is, he did say that they do account for packing up your car, but there's no way that they do. Quite often the packing process, if for example the packages weren't available or you couldn't get into the depot for whatever reason, could take between, so on the good side maybe half an hour, on the bad side more like an hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half. This is all time that's just not paid for. Unfair competition practices is another thing that he mentions. What he's talking about here is the fact that Evri don't do really very proper checks compared to the other large companies such as Deliveroo, Just Eat and Uber Eats in the gig economy. I can't remember them once asking for, for example, my proof to work in the UK, meaning, or the fact that I'm paying any tax. Meaning that obviously there are people out there that maybe don't have the right to work in the UK and are not paying tax, who are able to skirt the system and maybe pay a little bit less. The other thing as well is that a lot of couriers are driving out there with improper insurance, and a lot of them actually, to be fair, don't know about it, because what Evri say is, don't worry about the insurance, we've got you covered. However, this is only half of the story. So when you go and work for them, they say, we've got an insurance company called Marsh that will cover you for all your insurance while you're driving in the car. What they don't tell you is that you have to check with your actual insurer for your social, domestic and pleasure insurance that they accept this Marsh add-on. And if they don't accept the Marsh add-on, then you are putting yourself at risk of basically having no insurance with driving your car, because if your normal insurer finds out about this, they can void your policy and then you're not covered for anything whatsoever. So yeah, let's move on to the next one. Is poor treatment and health and safety issues. So it's not something that I saw massively when I worked with Evri. Generally the people working in the depot are pretty fair and safe around me. However, Evri as a company, basically when the lorry comes in, they chuck all of the parcels into cages. A lot of these cages I found were broken, so like bits of metal will be hanging off the end of them. If you caught that on your skin, it's going to obviously rip your skin, so that's obviously a health and safety hazard. Also on top of this, a lot of times the brakes on the wheels weren't working properly, so the cages could just randomly start flying away. The depot that I used to go to, basically, the depot itself is not big enough to house all the couriers. So you're told to park outside, bring the cages outside. So the depot is actually on a hill. So sometimes the cage would actually start rolling down the hill. You have to quickly go and rescue it. So there's definite health and safety things that aren't really being looked at properly, I don't think, by Evri. So yeah, they're definitely guilty of this one to a certain extent. The next one is bullying and intimidation and exploitation of vulnerable workers. It's not something that I can say that I saw myself, to be fair to Evri. However, when I did ask pretty normal questions like, what's the round rate for this round that you're asking me to do? I got no answer, which I believe is not bullying or intimidation, but it's certainly unfair working practices. And when it's talking about the exploitation of vulnerable workers, I can see how somebody that doesn't have the right to work in the UK could be exploited against, because at the end of the day, they know that that person is in a position where they can't necessarily go and find work elsewhere. So I could see how this could be true, but not something that I saw myself. He's talking about lack of proper courier checks, so that goes back to what I said before, that I was never really asked for. Like other companies, they ask for a DBS, never got asked for a DBS. They would ask for proof of right to work in the UK, never got asked for it. Sometimes like proof of national insurance number, never got asked for it. Trying to think if there's anything else. Basically, didn't really get checked on anything particularly. All they really checked was my car, made sure that I could actually physically take the parcels. Lastly, failure to address courier concerns. Now this is obviously one that I would agree with. As I said before, I asked what the round rate was a few times, wasn't told anything. I brought up the fact that the HelloFresh parcels didn't have a weight on them, the fact that my parcels were misbanded. All of it was completely shoved under the rug. There was one day as well where I turned up to the depot and all my parcels had been taken by another courier. I said to them, well, hang on a minute, you know, I've travelled all the way here. Now you're telling me I've got no work. What's the deal with that? Never received any response. So yeah, they definitely don't care about their couriers from what I can see. At the time when I worked for Evri, it was the fact that at the time there wasn't a lot of gig economy work going on at the time, so I did start to work for them. I got quite quick at my round, so I made like a half decent-ish amount of money, but not fantastic. So then I stopped when I think I did 3 months, and then I started getting my first couple of paychecks, and I was like, this isn't worth it. Obviously, when I worked for the contractor, so when I worked for Evri, they were paying, it worked out about 59 pence per drop. The contractor was paying me £1 per drop, and like I said, it was in the area that I lived. Literally, like sometimes I was delivering parcels to my own house, so that was much more worth it. And I was dealing directly with the contractor, not with Evri. I was just picking up from their depot. So from my point of view, that's the only way that it's worth dealing with it, because if I ever had an issue when I was working with the contractor, I went straight to that contractor. He was really reasonable and sorted out any concerns I had straight away. Well, I think the most worrying thing about the whole thing is that if you watch the actual video, like I say, I'll share it in the comment section down below or the description of the video. It's just the nonchalant way that Hugo Martin, the representative for Evri, answers the questions. Like basically, like, we're great. I don't recognise that we have any of these issues in our business. I don't see how they can not recognise it. All you got to do is go on to any social media platform, type in Evri courier support, Facebook being the main one, and you'll find tons and tons of these kind of complaints. So how they can say that they haven't had any of these complaints in-house is completely beyond me. I know that there are some couriers out there that are really happy, you know, like they've got self-employed plus contract, and they've done the same round for ages. They know their customers, and that's fair enough. You know, sometimes that just works for them. But I think for probably 80% of the couriers that work for Evri, it doesn't really work for them. So, slave driver contract. Is it a slave driving contract? I would say maybe not quite that bad, but definitely there are some definite improvements that need to be made, I think, to how they're working. And from what I've heard, it's only gotten worse since this, which is actually quite scary. From what I've heard, they've now introduced a new bracket into the rating system for how they measure how much parcels are going to be paid, and it's like small packet, I think I've seen people say. But I've seen some of the small packets shared in pictures online, and some of them are like a TV in a box, say, you know, not actually a TV in a box, but that kind of size of package. Obviously not a small package. So yeah, that's my reaction to how they dealt with being pulled in front of the Business and Trade Committee. But please let me know if your experience is different whilst working for Evri, or if you're an Evri customer and you didn't know any of this was going on, but you were wondering what's going on with my parcels. Sometimes, obviously, parcels not left in the best of condition. And this is probably why they get so many parcels going missing and damaged, because couriers feel like they've got a rush. It's just not a great company to work for. Anyway, have a lovely day, guys. I shall catch you in the next video. Adios.